Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kizer Cormorant. Uh, this is a knife that has gone through many iterations in a relatively short period of time. I've got two variations of it here to show you. And talk a little bit about its design and some comparable knives and a few interesting features that make this knife kind of unique. Um, I don't have the V1, the version 1 Kizer Cormorant here to show you, but the standard configuration for this knife that you see most often, the version 1 and 2 and 3, all have black and white G10 handles. And I think they all have CPM S35V blade steel, which is great. These retail for about 120 bucks, which is, I think, appropriate, but, for what you're getting compared to other knives with similar materials and features. They are made in China. You see this S35VN, which is, of course, a powder metallurgy steel. Okay. These are designed by somebody named Yui, I believe. The blade shape is sort of a modified sheep's foot, right? Or some people might call this a reverse tanto. But a more traditional sheep's foot blade would be flatter across the edge of the blade. This one, has some belly. It turns up toward the point. One of the reasons people like this knife is that it has several different methods for deployment. Oop. So it's a button lock, right? So you could depress the button and just sort of flip the knife open or closed. It has a flipper tab. Okay. It has a front flipper. And it has a finger hole. So you can do the thumb or middle finger flick to open it up. It runs on ball bearings. So it opens pretty smoothly and pretty quickly. The downside of ball bearings is that they can get gummed up with debris, from your pocket or from, whatever you're cutting. This version is one of a few exclusive models. This is from White Mountain Knives, and it is in CPM 3V steel, right, which is a super steel by most definitions of that term. It is a powder metallurgy steel. It is extremely high toughness and very, very good edge retention, but it is not stainless steel. Okay, so this could have some patina develop over time on the blade, or if you don't take care of it at all, it could actually get some rust spots on it, which would be unfortunate. As you see here, there's quite a bit of jimping at the near the tang of the blade and along the top edge here. As far as ergonomics go, it is relatively comfortable in this grip. It does have a bit of a finger choil here, so you can choke up on it a little bit for a little bit finer control of the tip of the blade there. You can put your finger on the spine and do some draw cuts using that jimping, or even in front of the jimping, right? It's nicely chamfered up here. It's got a little bit of a swedge. It is a hollow grind, saber height. Uh, it's the design of that modified sheep's foot is going to be pretty good for piercing, even though it's not as aggressive a tip as you'd see on like a clip point blade. Inset steel liners. Okay, this one's got micarta. I think they call this natural micarta. Some of the other exclusive versions out there. There's another one from White Mountain Knives that has the black and white G10, but is larger. It's the Cormorant XL, and the standard blade here is about 3¼ inches. The XL is 3½. So it's not a tremendously huge difference. But keep in mind, when you add length to the blade, you also have to add length to the handle, because the blade has to fit entirely within the handle. So the overall length is, instead of just 1/4 inch bigger, it's more than that. And there's a exclusive version of this knife as well, the regular size from Knife Center, or there was. They may be gone now. That was in CPM 4V as opposed to 3V, and that one had I think black micarta handle scales. I really prefer the micarta handle on this one. Not that I don't like G10. I have a lot of knives with G10 handle scales that I do like, but this one has a pretty aggressive texture to it, and there's no flat area where the pocket clip contacts the handle scale, and so when you put this in your pocket, it really grabs on there, and when you pull it out, first of all, it takes some effort to pull it out. Secondly, it is gripping the fabric of your pocket pretty firmly, and it's going to eventually, if you were to carry this every day, you'd start seeing some damage to the pockets of your pants where this kind of rips it up. The design of this one, this is a V3. This has symbols that you might find on a game controller. This came out at about the same time that the Netflix TV series, the Korean TV series Squid Game, was popular. And of course, those same symbols appear on the some of the characters in that TV series. So that might be, they might be capitalizing on that fad or that fandom, I guess. The other versions in black and white G10, one of them has sort of a similar pattern to this, where it's got white X's on it, and one of them's got white lines. But I think all of them in the G10 are going to be this aggressive material with no flat area where the pocket clip touches the handle scale, and I think they're all going to have that same issue with ripping up your pants pockets. So I would really recommend getting the micarta version if you're going to get this knife. It's still got plenty of grip, and it's just not as harsh on your pockets. It's not going to rip up your pockets as much. So cormorant. What is a cormorant? It's a bird. A lot of people think that some pocket knives are kind of bird shaped. They have a sort of a beak. One of the things that's interesting about the cormorant is that in Japan and parts of China, there's a tradition of cormorant fishing, which is humans using the cormorant bird to help them catch fish. or to catch fish for them, really. They train the birds to swoop down and catch fish out of the water and then fly back to the boat with the fishermen. And one of the things that's a little weird about that process of fishing is that in order to prevent the bird from swallowing the fish, the fishermen tie a string, a cord, around the bird's throat that prevent it from expanding large enough to swallow a big fish. So, the bird can still breathe, but it's got this cord around its throat that makes it so that it can't choke down a great big fish. So it goes out, catches a fish, flies back to the boat with the fish still in its mouth because it can't swallow it, surrenders the fish to the fisherman, and is rewarded with a smaller fish as payment for the big fish. Yeah, kind of a weird arrangement, but evidently that is a traditional method of fishing in that part of the world. Now, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if this is named after the cormorant, it has some relationship to the bird. With this interesting little cutaway here, either the finger choil or this sort of area that has been cut away so that you have access to the thumb hole, which also makes sort of a guard, right, for your hand, place for your finger to go. Knowing that story about the cormorant fishing, I every time I look at this knife, I see this as like that narrow part of the throat, right, where the string is constricting the neck of the bird. I don't know if that was part of the intention, but I can't help but see it that way, knowing the story. Now, if you use that area, that guard, for your index finger, I mean, this is fine. My pinky doesn't really quite, I can kind of squeeze it on to the handle, but you're giving up a lot of real estate, ahead of that, in order to get that grip. It's a firm grip, right? I mean, you would, for piercing or for push cuts, I'd be fine. If you're going to choke up, there's a kind of a shallow choil here. If you're used to much deeper finger choils like you'd see on like a paramilitary 2 or para 3 from Spyderco, this is going to feel like it's a little underwhelming. And there's the heel, the back edge of that blade really comes up pretty close to where your finger's going to go there in that choil. So it would definitely be something you would do cautiously and just for more fine work. You cannot really hold this knife in a reverse grip because you'd really risk depressing that button and unlocking the knife. Lockup is fine. Button locks generally don't seem as secure to me as a lot of other locking mechanisms. Plunge locks is what I'm talking about here, where there's just sort of a little groove in the heel there that the plunge mechanism seats into to keep the blade from closing. It's fine. I mean, it would fail if you were to do something stupid with it. So don't do something stupid with it. But under normal use, this style of button lock is perfectly adequate. I am not the first person to notice a similarity between the Cormorant and the Spyderco Smock. You know, this knife has a button mechanism, right? So it does, operate like a button lock, but it's not a plunge lock. The way that this lock physically works is with it's the same mechanism as the compression lock that you see on other Spyderco knives, which is, kind of like a liner lock. It's got this piece of the steel liner that uh, intersects the heel of the knife there, but it doesn't just make flat contact with it. The compression lock, the lock has a little tab that instead of just fitting flat against the tang of the knife there, it actually kind of seats into a little cutout area of that back of the blade, and it's an extremely strong lock. It's one of the stronger pocket knife locks that you're going to find. This knife can be flicked open by depressing the button, but it's a considerably stronger detent, so it's not going to, deploying it that way doesn't really make sense. It makes much more sense to use the flipper tab, which works great. Spyderco has very few models that have any kind of flipper. This is one of them. Or use the thumb hole, right? Or use it as for the reverse flick. This has a similar sort of general shape to the handle, right? It's got this indentation here, sort of a finger guard, place where you can put your finger, or you can choke up on it. This choil is kind of a weird shape, and you can certainly put your finger there, but the back edge of that blade comes right up to that. So you'd really want to only use your fingertip in most cases if you're choking up with this knife. It's awkward to hold it with your finger here, right? This is fine, but you're, again, you're kind of falling off the back of the handle with that fourth finger, and you have more reach, but not as much control over the end of the blade. This has similarly that sort of modified sheep's foot. There's a little bit of belly in the blade. There's more belly in the Cormorant blade. Slightly piercy. Cormorant is more piercy. This has jimping up top. Nice, just a couple of filed out or milled out spots there, but pretty aggressive, pretty strong grip. This is carbon fiber laminate over G10, so it's just a thin layer of carbon fiber on top of G10, and not as aggressive as the G10 on the Cormorant. This is not going to tear up your pocket as much, but it's pretty tight on the fabric. Lanyard hole, which the Cormorant doesn't have. It does have reversible. Those holes on the end there for the pocket clip, not for a lanyard. Full steel liners, not nested, right? And the blade steel on this is CPM 30V, which is an excellent blade steel. I think people just tend to think that the higher numbers, 35 is better than 30, right? And 35 is newer than 30, but they have slightly different qualities. It's not as easy as just saying that one is better than the other. The CPM 30 might be slightly more chippy, but also probably has slightly better edge retention than 35. I think a lot of people perceive S30V as being kind of a outdated steel at this point because it's been around a while, but it has always been a great knife steel and still is. Good balance of edge retention, toughness, and corrosion resistance, and it's not terribly hard to sharpen. So I wouldn't dismiss S30V as a good option for blades. The feel of this thing when you open it and lock it, and also when you close it, just feels a little bit more solid, a little more robust than the Cormorant, and that's because of that, the way that this lock interacts. There's just a lot more steel on steel contact back here when this thing locks up. I would expect this knife to, hold up to more abuse, but don't abuse your knives. Hollow grind, right? Like the Cormorant, which is a little unusual for Spyderco. Spyderco is known, for a lot of their designs use a flat grind, which makes them very slicey. But this is a hollow saber grind. The choil, as I said, this choil might, if you're used to using Spyderco knives, this choil might seem like a sort of a shallower version of the choil you'd find on something like the Pair 3, right? Where, this is the same idea. It's partly the blade that's cut away and partly the handle that's cut away to create this spot for your index finger to rest in. But it's executed differently, right? So this, you might not even properly call this a choil because it doesn't come up to the sharpened edge of the blade. It has this little tab that separates this finger guard area from the blade. So you're not going to easily, cut yourself just by holding it that way. And it's going to give you really very strong grip, even choked up. And you can, of course, choke back on it and have a little more reach. You can kind of do that with a Cormorant. But you're going to be a little more delicate in the gripped up position because of the proximity of this finger choil to that edge, and also the fact that this is a shallow choil. Your finger's not like deep into the guarded area, so really it's more of a fingertip kind of a thing. Spyderco, the evolution of that design is something that you can really see through Spyderco's product line. A lot of knives, take this Benchmade. This is a mini Griptilian, right? This area between, sort of the guarded grip for the hand and the blade is sort of a useless area, right? You can't put your finger there. I mean, you could kind of put your fingertip there, but it's a weird, awkward grip, and you're darn close to that sharp edge. And it's not a cutting area, so it's just kind of lost space, right? And Spyderco had this with some of their early designs too. This is a Delica 4, right? So this is after it's gone through several iterations of development, but it retains from the original Delica design this sort of awkward, this unusual space here, right? The prescriptive shape of the handle really wants you to grip back here, which is fine. That gives you a nice secure grip. But because instead of sticking out, I mean, yes, this comes to a point here, but in front of that point is a little indentation kind of on the ricasso. you know, it's not it's not a choil, it's not half moon shaped or semicircular, but there's a little sort of V shape here formed by um, the where the handle marries up to the ricasso of the blade, and that's a perfectly okay place for a finger when you're choking up on the blade to do some finer work, right? And you know, realizing that that's how people were using it, uh, Spyderco incorporated that more intentionally into other designs, you know, like this dragonfly, right? Um, or even this bird. Bird is Spyderco's sort of budget line. This is the bird meadowlark, which is basically a Spyderco Delica with a few small differences. You know, obviously a different shape in the hole, different blade steels. This is most Delicas are VG10. This is 8CR 13 MOV, which is more of a budget steel. It's not going to perform quite as well as VG10. So this is a much less expensive knife. But ergonomically, it's actually a little bit of an improvement over the Delica, at least in terms of having that choil for your finger up front, where you can really control the blade. Right, so we see that to some extent in the Smock, although, as I said, this is sort of a weird shape. See it for sure in the Pair 3, and we see something similar in the Cormorant. All right, so there's a little quick look at the Cormorant and at the Smock, which I think is probably its closest design cousin. The you know, Spyderco is an American company, but this particular knife is made in Taichung, Taiwan. Spyderco manufactures their knives in facilities in Italy and Japan and the United States and Taiwan. And these Kizers, you know, it's a Chinese company, even though it has a sort of a German-sounding name. All right, well, that's my little overview of the Kizer Cormorant. I hope it was useful. Thanks.